my friends and grandma used to say that any human being has one mouth and two ears, so you have to listen twice as much as you speak. At the end of the day, the central bank's job is to provide public good to the society. For Latvia to become really kind of well-off and wealthy country, we need to take decisions that are based into analysis.
This is the Person of Interest podcast, where we meet extraordinary people with a story to tell.
Well, welcome back to the SSE Riga podcast. I'll begin with the apologies. You may hear some background noise. That's because we have everything aerated. We're maintaining social distance, and I'm particularly delighted to welcome my guest today, who not only is very important, but I happen to have known for quite a long time, which is a unique combination, I think. Mārtiņš Kazāks. Welcome, Mārtiņš.
Thank you.
Mārtiņš, for those who don't know, is officially the job title I think is President of the Latvian Central Bank, but effectively the governor. Yeah. And you've been in that position for nearly a year now.
10 months.
Mārtiņš was born in Liepāja, Latvia's third city, educated at the University of Latvia, Cambridge, and the University of London. From 2005 to 2018, he was an economist and the chief economist with Hansa Bank, which became Swedbank. And from 2014 to 2018, he was sitting on Latvia's Fiscal Discipline Council, which I always think is a nice-sounding job title. It should involve a little bit of leather and whips, but the task is really to keep
just the pen,
keep spending in line rather than anything else. And so, 21st of December, you had a nice Christmas present last year, becoming the Latvian Bank president. So, welcome to SSE Riga.
Thank you.
I want to get out of the way. I have a question for you I've been meaning to ask for a while. Do you remember the first time we met? Because I can remember verbatim the conversation we had.
That just must have been in London, 20 years ago or something like that.
I know, this was the terrifying thing. I researched the dates, and I thought it was probably about 12 or 13 years ago, but it turns out it was 18 years ago. 18. 2002, in the Latvian bar.
Okay.
And I remember coincidentally, I was at the bar, and someone introduced us, and I remember the conversation we had. I said hello, you said hello. I said, we exchanged names. I said, what do you do? And you said, I'm a student. I said, what do you study? And you looked at me, fixed me with this sort of quite ironic grin and said, the Lats. Now, at this point, usually, if you'd said history or geography, I might have been able to wing it that I knew something about the subject and could engage you in a conversation. But I knew pretty much nothing about the Lats, which was the currency of Latvia at the time. So I think my reply was, can I buy you a drink? Anyway, so that was that. But at that point, I remember that conversation because when you became central bank governor, I had a very strong impression that I was not at all surprised. It seemed that somehow, if that's what you'd been studying all those years before, sort of the natural path for you was to end up as a Latvian central bank governor. Was it part of a lengthy plan?
You missed out one part in my CV. Prior to 2005, when I got my PhD, returned back to Latvia, I used to work for this school for over 10 years on and off, Being a student, you never have enough money, so when you don't have money, you have to work. So I did really enjoy being a lecturer, working with students, and this perhaps is one of the things that I do miss most from my past career. But coming back to the career plan, sure, kind of monetary policy, financial markets was the idea. Was the topic that I liked very much. And I, of course, did my PhD on that. And at some point, of course, there is an idea to work for the central bank at some point. But is it going to be the governor or any other job at the bank? I was not that specific. My kind of topic was monetary policy, financial markets, macro-related, applied economics also, and this just naturally happened to some extent, but it was not intentional. when I kind of roll back the time, more than 18 years back, like 30 years back, and when I was about to graduate high school, and being an economist was not my top choice. It was just kind of, the one which, was the natural outcome of other choices.
Was that because of like the grades you'd got, or
No, it was, well, I got quite good grades, and I have big thanks to say to my teachers at the school, but it was early 90s, and that was, by and large, 3 areas: either a doctor, a lawyer, or an economist.
Mm-hmm.
And as a doctor, I thought you have to be a surgeon, you have to, operate and that kind of stuff, and I thought, it's not for me. As a lawyer, you sometimes have to deal with crooks, which was not for me. So, it's an economist. But I like the area very much. It's very analytical, and it's really interesting stuff. It involves development of the society.
Yeah.
Because economics is all about the society. So it's a very interesting and very topic that changes along the way the society develops.
Was it, or did you have an experience where you saw this connection between, economics, which can be seen as a very analytical and dry subject in certain parts, and this engagement with society, or what we might call real life? I mean, was that what switched you on to committing to it rather than falling into it?
No. It was like a residual, a residual choice, which turned out to be, I would say, the very best choice, the first best in a way.
I mean, I know that having watched your career over a few years, something that you're very strong on and always trying to emphasize is kind of communicating with society at large, with, for want of a better term, ordinary people, about what these economic processes involve, the effect that things like central banks and banking systems can have. I mean, is that because you have a conviction that that's something which is very much lacking?
I think we can do better in this area, and we very clearly see this happening. We see ECB strategy review this year and next year, very much involving the listening part. In a way, my friends, grandma used to say that any human being has one mouth and 2 ears, so you have to listen twice as much as you speak. So I would say this is natural part of it. The central bank has to listen to the society, and it has 2 very good outcomes. One is the central bank better understands what is going on, and then the society also better understands what the central bank is trying to do. At the end of the day, the central bank's job is to provide public good to the society. And it can only provide this public good to the society, to my view, if it is independent, if it is politically independent, which means that the central bank is not following the business, is not following the political cycle, it is following the business cycle, And it is beneficial and supportive to the society in a way that it allows to take a longer-term perspective. It allows to discuss and take the decisions that are good for the society, but not always consistent with the political agenda of the then coalitions. Okay? And the central bank can only retain this independence if the public, if the society sees value in the central bank providing this public good. And that's why it's very important to keep doing good things so that the society can appreciate it. And then the society will defend the central bank against kind of reduction in the independence of the central bank. So it has multiple aspects to that, but central bank has to be involved in the society to better attain its goals.
But can we get into sort of the nuts and bolts of this?
Yep.
It's all very well to say, we want to serve the public good, but what are the actual mechanics? What are the things that the central bank does or does not do which enable this? And what do you press a button? Do you tell someone to go somewhere? How does it work?
The central bank works as any institution. It is not set up of the smartest people in the world. These are people who are quite smart, who are who have specialized in the area. So they are experts in that part. But it does not mean that they are faultless, that they know everything what to do. Let's take a sober look at the institutions. We hope that the institutions are good, and in many respects they are, but they still have room to develop going further. Okay, so the institution is run like any other institution, and it is made up of people you see walking around. They're your friends, your family, and things like that. Your classmates, at the school, or your course mates at the university. But then going there, so it's nothing extraordinary there. Okay, we just try to do the best we can in the area that we are specializing in. As to the question, what are we doing? We do lots of things. Okay, but I can just name them, and it's most likely going to be too boring for our listeners. So,
well, no, not necessarily. I mean, if I might just take like an example or something. We know that the central bank is something to do with the money supply, right?
Yeah, sure. But just open your wallet. Yeah. Open your wallet. What do you see there? You see there banknotes, coins, maybe a payment card. Okay, hopefully a payment card. Because everything is getting digital now. So this is one aspect of what the central bank is doing. Okay?
Yes, but what do you do that affects those coins, those cards in your wallet?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting to. One is the banknotes, coins, cash in general, all the circulation issues in terms of minting those coins, printing the banknotes, circulation in the economy, which means kind of providing new types of banknotes that are safer. Taking out the banknotes that are not valid for use anymore.
That's just one thing I'm actually
that's
quite interested in.
That's one of the things.
But how do you actually take things out of circulation? Because it would seem to be easier to put things in than out.
No. It's like the shops, banks. Always work with the companies that are organizing the support of this money circulation thing. And about 20 to 30% of this cash regularly comes through the Bank of Latvia. Okay. And that's where we sort it. The damaged banknotes and coins we take out, we destroy them, okay, and we put new ones in place of those. So it is a very technical thing that we do, and in fact we supply this service not only to the Latvian economy, but also to the Estonian and Lithuanian to some extent. Right. So in this aspect, we work as a central bank for the 3 Baltic states in terms of cash. But that's only one aspect. There's also, of course, the payment systems in general. When you use your bank card, in many cases, you would transfer money from one bank to another, and that also involves the Bank of Latvia. The very recent development, it's like 2-3 years ago, we introduced so-called instant payments, or in Latvian zibmaksā, which allows you to transfer money from one bank to another one just in a second. Okay, and that infrastructure is also provided by the Bank of Latvia. It's developed by the Bank of Latvia, and that is also supplied to the clients, not only to the Latvian economy, but also to Estonia, and to some extent also for Lithuania. So we also provide the backbone of the payment system in our economy. What else do? We do statistics. We analyze economy. We have the credit register, which is used widely by lenders to see what's the credit stance of the borrower. We have the function of advising government and the parliament on economic issues. We also, of course, decide on and implement monetary policy. We manage our reserves. We kind of provide payment services to the government, and we do that for free. So on and on and on. So there are lots of things that we do. We take care of the financial stability issues, not with respect to kind of specific or certain banks, but on the whole in the economy, working together with the Ministry of Finance and the FCMC. So the portfolio of things that we do is extremely wide. And of course, at the end of the day, as I said, we also mint coins. The coins is our business as well.
This is the old-fashioned aspect of it.
But that's a so small part of our everyday life, but a very important one, and we will keep doing that.
And this idea that you offer advice to policymakers as well. I mean, there have been, over the last few years, even talk about the central bank being a think tank or a financial competence centre. Mm-hmm. Is it difficult to give advice in an impartial manner because people will tend to read one position or another into any advice that's given? How do you kind of square that and maintain a reputation of kind of being at one step back from, say, politicians or business lobbies and so on?
And that's why the independence is important. The independence is important so that we can speak our mind. At the end of the day, my view is that for Latvia to become really kind of well-off and wealthy country, we need to take decisions that are based into analysis, that are consistent. Those that are made today, the decisions, they should be consistent with what we need in the future. So, and Bank of Latvia can certainly support this, okay, given the analytic firepower, if I may say so, that we have. And we will develop that in the future. But of course, the issue that you mentioned, how can we say something, for instance, that the politicians don't like? Well, we have to. That's our mandate. Yeah. The society has given this mandate to us as the central bank, and we have to say what our analysis tells. If we will start, playing around with this, it is not going to end well. So unfortunately, it is very clear that sometimes we will be on the same page with politicians and sometimes we will not be. That's part of life.
Do you feel any pressure sometimes to go a certain way? I mean, how do you cope with that? I mean, there must be some sort of slight residual sort of stress in the background. I mean, also from people like myself, you'll always have, being a member of the ECB's governing council, you'll always have some journalist kind of hanging on your every word, wanting to interpret any throwaway comment to the maximum import. Yeah. But I mean, do you have any strategies to deal with that?
I would just have to be as clear-cut as you can. Just plain simple. Talk in a way that this is difficult to take out of the context. That's part of your everyday routine.
Well, I promise not to ask you about interest rates and so on, because I've never really understood them anyway. But have you modified your behaviour, your personal behaviour since becoming central bank governor? In what ways?
Well, you see, I used to be chief economist for a commercial bank, and then you have to be much more outspoken. You can be much more controversial. As a central bank governor, you really have to be careful so that you do not get kind of pulled out of context and misinterpreted. You have to be much more careful. That's true.
So is this sort of hours of practicing things in front of the mirror, or
once in a while you fail? Life is life. But you try to do the best you can.
And moving on to the role at the European Central Bank, I mean, it's obviously very, very important. I mean, this is a top job where you have a say, essentially, in the economy of a huge 600 million or whatever block. That comes with pressures of its own. But can you just talk us through how the ECB works? I mean, there are the 19 central bank governors and I think 6 members of the
executive board.
The executive board. So 25 of you. What would a meeting be like when you get together?
It's like everybody sitting around the table, hopefully well prepared in advance, and then discussing and then taking the decision. It is very much discussion based, and and it does not matter of which country you come from. If you have an argument, you can persuade others as well. So
this idea that it's just
it's the
Germany
battle
and
of talent.
France that call the shots is not.
Of course, they are bigger economies, and their financial system is much more complex, and there are market segments that do not exist in the Baltics, for instance, or in Latvia for that matter. Of course, in many areas, they have much more hands-on experience because they are more complex and larger economies. But at the same time, being from a small economy does not mean that you do not have a say, that you do not have an idea that could be put forward, And I would say that's a very nice thing about ECB, They listen into the issues, and if you are good enough, you can, change the decision if necessary, or push forward, or change the angle or aspect of the viewpoint, So
how long would a meeting typically last?
It depends on the topic. I would say that the ECB has very clearly shown over the COVID crisis that we will meet as often as necessary. We will come to the decision when necessary, and we will do what is necessary for the economy to overcome this crisis. So the standard routine, for instance, for a monetary meeting would be that we kick off in the morning on Wednesday, we go till late evening, including dinner, and then the next day, half day, we take the decision, But that's a standard routine. But
and will everyone have a say at some point, or will some
course,
people,
of course. In a way, this is, in terms of discussion, it is very democratic way of doing these things, and I think that is very right because nobody is faultless, And of course, discussions are open, But then when we come to the decision, then everybody stands by it.
I'm interested in when you showed up at your first ECB meeting. I mean, presumably you were quite nervous, but what did you do to introduce yourself? Or had everyone been briefed about you beforehand?
Well, everybody was briefed. Let's not be naive.
No, but there is this. There is an interpersonal
of course.
exchange which takes place, and people will judge you not just on your CV, but
of
on
course.
the way you look
and
speak.
Of course, I'm a very new governor. Okay, and unfortunately, I only had a couple of months of meetings, with physical presence. Since then, it's been remote. And that, of course, has taken away from the interpersonal relationships. Okay, and I hope that as soon as COVID, and I hope it will be dealt with as soon as possible, then we will return to physical meetings, and that, of course, the personal contact is very important. Okay, but from what I've seen so far, people are very friendly. If you have the idea to put on the table, then it doesn't matter who you are. Okay.
Are you at all uneasy about the fact that it still seems to be very much male-dominated? There aren't many women representatives there.
It's not that there are any. ECB is run by Christine Lagarde.
Yeah.
But
you look at the group photo.
Yeah, we also have Isabel Schnabel on the executive board, and they are doing very well, both of them. Of course, somewhat more gender balance would be welcome. Okay, but then at the end of the day, it's the issue of the society, of the societies in all 19 countries. Have these women been promoted? Do they have the experience and say during their career so that they can take this job? But it's not that bad. When we take a look at the vice governors, there are already many more women around the table. But that is one thing that we certainly should do better.
And you mentioned the COVID crisis, which is fairly obvious that we're still in the middle of that while this is being recorded. Has that changed, or might it change the ECB's role or the way that it operates? In that, it seems at the moment everyone is interventionist. Everyone wants big money flowing this way and that, and to whether it's for stimulus, whether it's for providing emergency funding for various different things. Is the ECB able to adapt, or does it need to adapt to this?
I think it is already adapting, and I would say that strategy review started prior to the COVID, okay, but COVID itself has somewhat also shifted some of the perspectives within the strategy review, and I would say one of the issues is, of course, the discussion on the policy mix. Central banks and monetary policy has overall been quite supportive, I would say very supportive, for the economy during this crisis. At the same time, we see that monetary policy can only play a supportive role here. Monetary policy can ensure market access. Monetary policy can ensure cheap financing. Monetary policy can remove market stress. Okay? But at the same time, only fiscal policy can direct money directly to the needs in the economy, to the specific segments that have been hit by the COVID crisis. So it very clearly, at least to me, shows that to deal with this crisis, the policy mix needs to be on the table. Fiscal policy has to be kind of a big part of the response. But this is not only fiscal policy, not kicking in early enough. It was very, and still is very welcome, the EU Next Generation item. But unfortunately, it seems that the money will start come into the European economy only in the spring next year. Okay, there's been quite a long implementation lag. Okay, but this is not only about spending or investing the money; it's also about structural issues. We need to come out of this crisis being stronger than we, European economy, were before this crisis. We cannot simply sit and wait and expect for the crisis, for the COVID to pass by, and then return to the situation where we were at the very beginning of 2020. No. The world has moved on, so we need to get ready for the future economy. That involves much more digitalization and many other aspects, also some geopolitical aspects. So a full mix means monetary, fiscal, structural. Okay, monetary is only one part of the equation.
I mean, is this new though, or has the coronavirus situation created some new thought or new direction in the long-term policy, or is it just a case of kind of making it clear that whatever the ECB was planning anyway just needs to be accelerated and a bit more reactive?
Oh, I would say it's both, and we are in the midst of discussions and we don't really know how it's going to play out and all these kind of things. But
so we can't really say what lessons we've learned.
There are already some lessons. I would say, if I bring back home, we had discussions in late 2019, early to 2020, discussions about working remotely, within the bank. And the idea was, okay, sure, we will use that, technologies allow for that, and that's kind of a medium-term future, few years into the future, we will do a bit of that.
Yeah.
Come March, in a week's time, 90% of the bank's employees are working remotely, from their own homes. It happens faster than one would have expected. What else does it open up? Of course, it opens up many risks in terms of income inequalities, because those industries that were hit were not the ones that were the most well off. From this crisis, we see that the hit to the economy is very asymmetric. There are industries that have benefited, there are industries that do not really feel anything yet, there are industries that have been put on hold by and large. Okay? So a major topic to discuss, of course, is going to be how this can be dealt with, how these income inequalities of opportunities are solved, because at the end of the day, it's also the issue of monetary policy. Unequal society, high income inequality does not only raise political risks, political sustainability risks or stability risks, but also to some extent some transmission issues for the monetary policy. So some things have been brought forward like time machine, what everybody thought is going to be sometimes in the future. It's now, okay? And some things, are being looked at from somewhat different perspective. But it's a very nice thing that ECB is undergoing now, the strategy review, so we can accommodate and take into account all these different aspects. But one should, just the kind of the point of caution is that the central banks and monetary policy cannot do all what is necessary. They are only responsible and able to affect part of the problem.
And I guess there's a bit of a paradigm shift in that in many of the eurozone economies, I mean, the rules, just simple rules regarding trading, for instance, are changing on like a weekly basis. So a small business can open one week, it can't open another week, it has to open a third week with certain restrictions in place. I mean, this must be kind of putting inputs into the economic models that have never really been seen before.
But then as well, what has this crisis pushed for is a wider use and more kind of extensive use of high-frequency data. This same Google mobility data, GDP gets published once a quarter, in some countries there's an estimate every month, and that is like looking into the mirror and trying to understand what happened, a few months ago. But it does not really much help what's going on in the front of you.
Do you think we might find a better indicator? We might lose this addiction to GDP? Or?
No. Well, GDP is still the best of what we have. It's not a perfect, by all means, not a perfect one, but we can improve it. We can also include some other supportive variables just to paint the picture, better. And we will use many more short-term variables. We will use many more micro-level variables and things like that, simply helping us to understand where is the economy going, what the businesses are doing, how the households are perceiving the situation.
I guess in a curious way, maybe general public at large is becoming more used to looking at pie charts and graphs and so on, because we check it for the COVID figures, and often it's not a million miles away from the same sort of analysis of economic data.
Very much so. But as we at the very beginning kind of noted, is that it's not only ability to analyze the data, but also to listen to the society and also talk to the society in a way that the society understands. Because at the end of the day, for monetary policy to be effective, one of the tools that we are using is forward guidance. And forward guidance works best if people really understand what you're talking about. So, And for policy to be effective, at the end of the day, it takes two to tango, the society and the central bank,
Well, our time's just about up, so I'm going to have to...
already.
But I did start with a rambling story about when we first met, and I can finish with a brief one about something that happened to me today, because you're also in my consciousness of one of, I think, 4 people in Latvia who know how to use a pocket square properly.
Thank you.
Yes, and I admire that fold. It's a beautiful
Thank
thing.
you.
And I knew I was coming to interview you today, and I forgot my pocket square as I left the house, and I was in a panic. So I thought, well, I've got to go and get one on the way to do the interview, because I can't comment on Mārtiņš pocket square and not have one myself. So I went into 3 different shops. In the end, I went into a little sewing shop. I said, do you have any handkerchiefs? Yes, we do. It got me out a nice selection of handkerchiefs. There was an old guy in the shop at the same time, and he was like, "Oh, you have handkerchiefs. Amazing. I've been looking for these everywhere. I've been ordering them from the internet." So I bought one. He bought one as well, and he was saying, I'm going to tell everyone that this is where you can buy handkerchiefs. So the fact that you are a devotee of the pocket square has been good for Latvian GDP, because not only have I bought one, but he's bought one and he's going to tell his friends too.
Thank
so it's
you.
these small things can make a big difference. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. This podcast was produced by SSC Riga. If you'd like to learn more about the topic, visit the open course schedule at SSC Riga Executive Education. For more podcasts, find us on Spotify, iTunes, or the platform of your choice. Remember, share this episode with your friends and colleagues.